Good morning, Leif. It's great to
Morning.
have you. I'm really delighted that you are joining us or joining me for this conversation. And I just thought I'd set a bit of context before we kick off. As you know, we welcomed you to present and connect with our corporate roundtable members back in February. And the members of that corporate roundtable are, like you, like-minded and hearted leaders from a range of organisations and industries who have a real interest in coaching. And it was fantastic to hear how you have brought into Australia's scientific leadership community your connection to coaching. So I just thought I'd, for our members, just introduce you and then perhaps ask you a few questions to share some of your thoughts and experiences. Does that work for you?
No problem, and thank you for the opportunity to share my experiences.
Fantastic, thanks, Leif. Well, I met Leif 2.5 years ago, just as he was rejoining CSIRO to lead the organisation's Food Innovation Centre and preparing to lead what was going to become, and what none of us could have anticipated would be, an avalanche of change impacting his world. What started as a typical organisational restructure and investment in innovation turned into dealing with bushfires, facility and site closures, and then, of course, COVID. Having worked with many science and research leaders in my career, I was immediately struck by Leif's openness, acceptance of ambiguity and uncertainty, and his courageous authenticity. Leif's care for others, his commitment to being genuinely curious, to really listen and to be at ease with showing his vulnerability, make him, in my experience, a refreshingly very human and exceptional leader. And the cherry on top is that, to his family, friends and team's delight, he loves preparing, cooking and eating good food. So, Leif, in your presentation to our corporate roundtable, you spoke about your transition as a leader, having worked in an organisation in Sweden where you described having too many chiefs and not enough Indians, and then moving to CSIRO in Australia to work in a very different type of culture. Are you able to share with us what role coaching has played in making this transition successful?
Yeah, no problem, Kerryn. I think what you referred to was when I was working in Sweden, and similar to what I'm doing in CSIRO at CSIRO in Australia. I was responsible for a food program at the Governmental Research Institute in Sweden. I had a leadership team of 6 or 7 people in my leadership team, and the mistakes I learned from in Sweden was much around how do we get a coherent gelling leadership team to support each other. And what I did there was also identify the individuals' different personalities and also their skills and expertise. Unfortunately, I never took that a step further and started to look at the collective leadership. We were always a bunch of individualists trying to lead the organization. So for me, we didn't lead the organization as a coherent leadership team. That was information which I learned from and brought with me to Australia. And I was lucky to meet up with Peak Global, and we started to look at how can we develop a leadership training program for the leadership I'm having here at CSIRO. And as part of that, we have also introduced change management but specifically focusing on peer coaching. And what we were looking for was to create a very collaborative and helpful environment. And my learnings from coaching has been that's the only way to really unleash people's brain power. And the way I've been looking at that is we are a innovation organization, CSRO, a research and innovation organization, and we are not supporting each other in a way that we are harnessing individuals' brain power. So that's where coaching started to fill a role for us. How can we, by open-ended question, get people to contribute more efficiently? And that is what we have tried to do in the leadership team, and also spread it across the whole research program I'm responsible for.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned a lot about the building of trust and how important that has been in the leadership team. And I'm just curious as to, how did you know that was happening as a result of connecting with coaching in this way?
So first of all, I think recognize that it was essential, was an important part in our leadership journey as well. And I guess my mantra has always been, if we want to collaborate, we need to, I never collaborated with somebody I don't know. So the basis for us being functional and starting to work together efficiently was to establish trust. And being investigative around and interested in other people's not only professional life but everyday experiences was the starting point of that. And on the advice from Kerryn, we also started to all our meetings with a few minutes to check in with each other. And this was very opportune during COVID as well, because most of our meetings were virtual, and we needed to just recalibrate ourselves to be part of the meeting. And that has also supported us getting to know each other. And we have had everybody at the meeting had an opportunity to lead check-in questions as well. So that has helped us. So how did that reflect on trust? I think it's the openness in our conversation now, and we are not afraid in a safe environment to call things out. But we have also made the environment very supportive. So if we have a problem issue which we are struggling with, we can also say that, and we know that the forum is helping us in that situation as well.
Mm. Well, you had shared a little bit about check-in questions at the corporate roundtable. Can you share a particular story that really resonates with you around the use of check-in and how that shifted that sense of connection amongst the leadership team?
Let me think about that one a bit, Kerryn. Let's jump to the next question. I'll think about that. Yeah. Okay,
right. You've also mentioned at the corporate roundtable how when you came to Australia, you noticed that leaders in Australia were sort of, if they were connected with coaching in some way or using it in some way, they were really just using it for coaching, for performance. Can you share a little bit more about that? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I think from my experience and expectations of coaching, it was not to manage performance. It was the opposite, to support each other and help each other. And obviously it can be used from a line management perspective to coach a person to change their behavior or the performance. But for me, it was more around how do we create an environment where we are looking at helping and supporting each other. And I guess my very personal experience around this was also my upbringing of my children. And I know I mentioned this to a few people that when I have 3 kids, 2 older boys and a younger daughter. And my daughter really suffered because she had 4 parents, two mum and a dad and 2 sons, who always made her decisions up for her. And she was never allowed to make her own decision. And for me, that was an important part of the learning of if we're not enabling people to make their own decisions, they will never be able to contribute efficiently either then. So telling people what to do is detrimental to our innovation organization, and it's not supporting us what we want to do then. So having coaching as an instrument to stimulate conversation and stimulate intellectual input was the main cause of what we wanted to create in the food program now.
I'd imagine that there would have been a fair bit of resistance to that, just like perhaps there may have been in your daughter in being sought to come up with her own solutions. In a scientific context, particularly, I'd imagine that would be a real challenge. So how have you been dealing with that?
So I think personally, coaching or not is not a black and white science. I think it is a conversation starter, and if you switch on your coaching hat, you could still have a very constructive conversation and give input and support, but you think about it in a slightly different way. And it's very easy, and especially when we are stressed, to be becoming more autocratic in a research organization and tell people what to do, because that's perceived to be the quickest solution. So I think by opening up conversations, allowing individuals to contribute with their own thoughts, and this is part of our inclusion and diversity journey as well, that we have all this inclusion and diversity in the organization, and if we don't take advantage of it, we are all doing ourselves a disfavor then.
And so when you talk about resistance, or when you think about resistance, what does that look like, and how have you managed it?
So I think it's part of building the trust, to be making sure that we can show a bit of vulnerability and open up to each other. And because the coaching conversations are often all started with, well, what is the problem issue which we want to solve? And if we can't have that conversation and admit that there is an issue or a problem, it's very difficult to continue the conversation and support the person to solve the problem as well then. So that's interlinked in the whole process.
Full circle, doesn't it, to trust?
Yeah, and I think our scientists are highly analytical and data driven as well, and this is to a large extent perceived as a bit more soft science, if you like. But we've had many conversations around trust the process, try it out, and test the value of it.
Wonderful. So anything else that you would like to share about your journey with coaching?
For me, I've always strived to improve myself and improve my leadership, and I've seen my leadership and my leadership team grow and accelerate their learnings as a collective. And that has been the main purpose for me to get the collective leadership feeling into the leadership and create a supportive environment. And I often talk about it's very lonely to be a leader. And that's why I also wanted to have an environment where you feel supported by your colleagues at work then.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Leif. That was really helpful to understand a bit more about your journey, and looking forward to continuing the conversations at the Corporate Roundtable and beyond.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to the collaboration.
Thank you.